Shabba's wife is missing, the search begins. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of gold and orange as Shabba stretched and yawned, ready to start his day. But something felt off. The village was waking up, women preparing food, men sharpening arrows, children laughing and running barefoot through the dust. But something was missing. His wife. Shabba looked around. She was nowhere to be seen. His heart started beating faster. Where had she gone? The search begins. Shabba walked to where she usually sat near the fire. Empty. He checked inside the small traditional hut he built for her. Nothing. Now, his concern turned to suspicion. He stormed over to Juma, who was lazily chewing on a piece of roasted meat. Juma. Have you seen my wife? Juma frowned. No. Maybe she went to the river? Shabba shook his head. She never goes alone. Something is wrong. The village elders watched as Shabba paced back and forth. One of the older men smirked. Maybe she has found another man, he joked. Shabba stopped in his tracks. His blood boiled. Was that possible? Had she left him for someone else? No. He refused to believe it. He would find her. Deep in the bush, a secret friend. While Shabba and the others searched, his wife sat in a hidden part of the forest, laughing softly. She wasn't alone. Sitting next to her was a massive baboon. Not just any baboon, the biggest, strongest one in the area. At first, she had been terrified of him. But after Shabba killed the last baboon, this one had followed her, watching her from the trees, studying her. One day, she offered him food. He took it. Slowly, they became friends. Now, he sat beside her like a guard, watching over her, protecting her. She stroked his fur gently. Shabba can never know about you. She knew the Hadzabe hunted baboons. If Shabba found out, he might see this baboon as just another meal. Shabba's rage grows. Shabba searched the village, the river, the open plains, no sign of her. His thoughts turned dark. What if another man had taken her? His fists clenched. No. He would find her. And if someone else had taken her, he would deal with them. Juma approached him. Shabba, let's think. She didn't just disappear. Maybe she wandered off? Shabba shook his head. She wouldn't. Something isn't right. Then, a child ran up to them. Shabba. I saw her. She went into the bush alone. Shabba's heart pounded. Why would she go alone? Unless she was meeting someone. His face darkened. Juma, get your bow. We go now. The discovery, Shabba sees the truth. Shabba and Juma moved quickly, tracking her footprints through the dirt. They reached the edge of the forest. Then, they heard something. Laughter. Shabba froze. He saw her, sitting on a rock, smiling, but not with another man. With a huge baboon. Shabba's breath caught in his throat. Juma whispered, "What is this?" Shabba couldn't believe his eyes. She was playing with the baboon, feeding it, talking to it like a friend. Like it was her protector. Shabba's confusion turned into pure anger. Woman! What is this? She jumped at his voice, turning to see Shabba storming toward her. The baboon growled, baring its teeth. Shabba reached for his bow. She jumped in front of the baboon. No, Shabba. Don't. Shabba's eyes narrowed. Move. She shook her head. He's my friend. Shabba and Juma exchanged looks. Juma whispered, Shabba, your wife has lost her mind. Shabba's jaw tightened. This was worse than another man. She had befriended a creature that should have been food. A choice must be made. The baboon watched Shabba carefully. Shabba's fingers tightened around his bow. His wife stepped closer. Shabba, please. He has protected me. He is not just an animal. Shabba's nostrils flared. He is not human. The village always told stories about people who spent too much time in the wild, who forgot who they were and became part of the animals. Was this happening to his wife? He took a deep breath. He had a choice. Kill the baboon and take her home. Or accept this strange friendship. For the first time in his life, Shabba hesitated. Juma whispered, "Brother, if you let this happen, the village will laugh at you forever." Shabba looked at his wife's eyes, pleading, desperate. And then, he did something no one expected. He lowered his bow. The baboon stopped growling. His wife sighed in relief. "Thank you, Shabba." Shabba scowled. "Come home. Now." She nodded, looking at the baboon one last time before following Shabba back. But as they walked away, the baboon watched them. And Shabba knew this wasn't over. The next day, Shabba's dilemma. The sun rose over the Hadzabe village, casting long golden rays through the baobab trees. The fire from the night before was now just ashes, and the smell of roasting meat filled the air. But Shabba wasn't eating. He sat alone, sharpening his arrows, his mind racing. His wife had betrayed him, not with another man, but with a baboon. A baboon. Juma sat next to him, chewing lazily on a piece of roasted meat. "Shabba, what are you going to do?" Shabba grunted. "I don't know." The whole village had heard what happened. They laughed at him. Shabba's wife has left him for a baboon. Maybe he should learn how to climb trees and steal fruit, too. The women giggled behind their hands. The men shook their heads. Shabba's pride was wounded. He had to do something. The plan, a hunt for respect. Shabba stood up suddenly. "I will hunt a baboon today." Juma nearly choked on his food. "What? Why?" Shabba's jaw tightened. "I will kill the biggest baboon in the land and make my wife a new outfit. Then she will remember who I am." Juma scratched his head. "Brother, what if the baboon she is friends with is the biggest one?" Shabba paused. Then, he smiled. "Then I will hunt him." Juma's eyes widened. "Shabba, are you mad?" "She will hate you forever." Shabba grunted. "Better she hates me than the village laughs at me." The hunt begins. Shabba gathered his best hunters, Juma, Temi, and Baraka. They painted their faces with white clay, tied their bows across their backs, and set out into the wild savanna. They moved swiftly, following the tracks left behind by the baboon troop. Juma whispered, "Shabba, are you sure about this?" Shabba didn't answer. His eyes burned with determination. Then, they heard it. A deep, guttural grunt. The sound of branches shaking. They had found the baboons. Shabba crouched low, gripping his bow. He scanned the trees. Then, he saw him. The big baboon. It was even larger than he remembered, sitting high on a branch, staring directly at him. As if it knew why Shabba had come. The hunters slowly pulled back their arrows, ready to strike. But then, a scream. Shabba's heart stopped. He turned his head sharply. His wife was running through the trees. Straight toward the baboon. "Stop," she shouted. "Don't hurt him." Shabba froze. His fingers trembled on the bowstring. Juma and the others exchanged nervous glances. The big baboon bared its teeth, standing its ground, protecting her. This wasn't just an animal anymore. This was a challenge. A challenge to Shabba as a man. The final decision. The village had taught Shabba that a man must fight for his woman. But never before had a man fought against a baboon for his wife's loyalty. His wife stood in front of the creature, arms out, tears in her eyes. "Shabba," she pleaded, "I don't want you to kill him." Shabba's jaw clenched. Juma whispered, "Shabba, if you walk away now, the village will never respect you." Juma whispered, "Shabba, if you walk away now, the village will never respect you." Shabba slowly lowered his bow. The big baboon grunted, standing taller. Shabba met its gaze. A silent understanding passed between them. Then, Shabba spoke. "This is not over." He turned sharply and walked away. His wife ran after him. "Shabba! Wait!" Shabba didn't stop. Juma sighed. "Shabba, what now?" Shabba growled, "We go back to the village." Baraka chuckled. "And what will you tell them?" Shabba's eyes darkened. "I will tell them," he said, "that my wife is no longer my wife." And with that, Shabba left her standing in the forest, caught between two worlds. The next day, Shabba's wife misses him. The sun rose over the vast African savanna, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and orange. Birds chirped, the distant roar of a lion echoed in the hills, and the Hadzabe village slowly came to life. Women prepared breakfast, children played near the fire, and the men sharpened their arrows for the day's hunt. But Shabba was nowhere to be seen. And neither was his wife. A woman alone in the wild. She sat beneath a giant baobab tree, staring at the dusty path leading to the village. She had spent the night alone, away from the warmth of Shabba and his people. At first, she thought she didn't care. She thought she could live without him, without his loud laugh, his wild energy, his stubborn ways. But now, as the wind whispered through the trees and the shadows of the forest grew darker, she felt it. She missed him. She missed his strength. She missed how he always made her laugh, even when she was angry. She missed how he protected her, even when she didn't think she needed protecting. And most of all, she missed how much he loved her. She sighed, hugging her knees. She had made a mistake. She had chosen a baboon over her husband. And now? She was alone. The journey back. She stood up, brushing the dust off her clothes. She didn't care what the village thought. She didn't care if they laughed at her. She only cared about finding Shabba. She walked quickly, her heart pounding with every step. The path was rough, but she didn't stop. The sun burned her skin, but she didn't stop. The wind howled through the trees, but she didn't stop. Finally, she saw it, the Hadzabe village. Smoke curled from the cooking fires. The sound of drums and laughter filled the air. And then, she saw him. Shabba's surprise. Shabba sat with the elders, drinking honey beer and listening to stories. His face was serious, but inside, his heart was heavy. He missed her. He wanted to believe he didn't, but he did. Then, a murmur rippled through the village. Heads turned. Whispers spread. Shabba looked up, and his breath caught in his throat. She was standing there. Her hair was wild, her face was tired, but her eyes searched only for him. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Shabba," she said softly. "I was wrong." Silence fell over the village. The men stared. The women waited. The elders leaned in. Shabba's jaw tightened. He stood up slowly, his powerful frame towering over her. "You chose a baboon over me," he said, his voice low. She swallowed hard. "I was confused." Shabba narrowed his eyes. "And now?" She looked him straight in the eyes. "Now I know there is no other man, no other creature, for me but you." The village gasped. Juma nearly dropped his beer. Shabba crossed his arms. "And why should I believe you?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Because I love you, Shabba." The air grew still. Then, Shabba laughed.